All right, so there's one more thing that I want to show you guys with foliage, and if we look at our building, it looks pretty bare. It would be nice to have a little bit of something, making it look like it's been here for a while. What I'm going to do to just kind of demonstrate how we can apply some vines, for example, is I've imported this English ivy asset from Quixel Bridge, and we'll go back into Unreal, and what we can do is I've just kind of, set up some basic settings for the density and all that. I set the max scale to 4, minimum scale to 1. I've included this square looking one in addition to the others so that we can kind of fill in the side. So if you want to paint on the side of things, we want to turn off align to normal. That's going to make the foliage stick out from the surface of your object. So we want to uncheck that, and then we want to go down here to our ground slope angle, and we want to change our maximum to 180. And that's going to allow us to paint pretty much on any surface. We have our ground, and if we set our ground slope angle to, say, 90, that means that anything that is 90 degrees vertical off the ground, so perpendicular to the ground, it will allow us to paint on that surface. Now, if we're set to 0, which is the default, we can only paint on surfaces that are level with the ground. So we could paint on these pipes and, maybe up here as well, but we wouldn't be able to paint on the side. And I'll show you guys that right here. So I'll reset this. Actually, it's normally set to 45. So if I try to paint here, nothing happens. Now, if we undo that and then we set this to 180, now if we paint, now we're getting our foliage on the side of our building. And that's important for this especially, so because we want to have that kind of filling in the side of our building a bit. So I'll just add a little bit more up here. I won't go that high. I'll probably add it like, something like that. And we can always adjust these later. I'll probably add some down here as well. I do want to paint these a little bit. I'm going to uncheck this one specifically. Control click on these objects, and we're going to set the maximum scale to like 1.5. Okay, that's just going to make things a little bit smaller, a little more manageable, and then we can just go ahead and kind of start painting. Also increase the density, so maybe go up to something like 30. See what happens there. Yeah, now we're getting a little bit more stuff going on here. And we do want to not just randomly do this everywhere. We do want to kind of pick where we're doing. I'm trying to do it on these pipes primarily. And now what we can do is kind of go in and start playing with individual pieces here. So if I go to our select mode, obviously this one is out of hand. This one as well. Taking the time to do this right is going to help you in the long run. So I've just kind of gone and added a few foliage instances myself in places that I wanted them. So just, up here, I added some decals up here as well. What we can actually do if we want to is we can go over into our foliage and we can find the assets that we used, and we can just go ahead and modify the meshes if we need to. So say we wanted to make them white, we can just double click this and turn our saturation down to say 0.1 or something. And that's going to desaturate them quite a bit. Now if we save that, we go back into here, we go into our translucency, and once again take the saturation down to about 0.2 or so. Now we can take a look at our mesh, and it's going to be much more desaturated. So now we can see all we had to do was modify the color of our albedo texture and the translucency texture, and now we just have some white looking vines growing on our building, and that applies to all of these instances, which is nice. so you don't have to go in and change them manually. So